we go. All right, another topic that we have here in Unit 6, if you've noticed, is I do have a couple of videos that talk about the Chrome developer tools. All right, these are third-party videos that take you out to links, I think, on YouTube or wherever. So I do recommend that you check those out. And then I'm also going to kind of follow through and talk about the dev tools that are in our browsers and talk about some different IDEs. So like my first goal is, since we're already like sitting here inside of, you know, this goofy stuff that we were working on in class here, these are all like demo websites that we are building, is to talk about that inspect tool or the developer tools that are included in most of our major browsers. And so like if you you know, go to your menu and you start looking, for example, for some of like the higher level tools that are available here, in Google Chrome at least, and you always have to look at the date. Today is October 31st, Halloween of 2024. You notice if you go to the More Tools tab, you have the developer tools that are available here. Now, if you click on developer tools, it basically puts you into the inspect mode of your browser, right? And this has a bunch of different tools, and mostly what we've done so far is we've worked inside this tab, right? The Elements tab, which shows us the hierarchy of our HTML document, for example, right? And you've seen this tool before. So like I can traverse my document, hover over one of the tags, it shows it to me on the screen. It tells me what tag it is. So if you look at the left side of the screen as I'm hovering, it shows you the size of the object currently as it is being displayed. If I go ahead and click through on it, it will also load up all the CSS. And then I want you to notice some of the CSS, you can see it comes from my style sheet, right? And which line number on my style sheet. It also allows me to control whether the style is applied or not. Pretty slick, right? If I want, I can also go in here and change the style. So for example, if I'm, you know, currently text aligning center and I remove it, what happens if I come in here and click in there and instead of centering, I type right? And I can do that. That's really weird, right? It doesn't change my code, but it allows me to see what effect it has on my code. Now, all the ones that are listed as coming from my style sheet, I can go in later and edit actually on my style sheet. I can also, if you're noticing the plus sign, I can also add styles if I wish, right? So I just hit the little button, I can start typing and I can see what it does. Once again, it's not going to save to the style sheet though, right? But you can see what it does and then copy it from here and put it in your style sheet. Another thing you have to think about is I might be clicked on a certain tag, the H2, right? So it'll show you all the CSS tags that I have that are affecting that particular tag. It also shows the styles that are being inherited from the higher level tags that are holding the tag that I'm looking at. So the body tag color, right, is affecting this. All the other ones that are crossed off are not affected in that tag. And then other ones that are, you know, relevant but not really affecting that tag particularly are kind of grayed out, right? But that's also in my style sheet. But you'll notice that there's also what we call the user agent style sheet, which is the one that resides inside the browser by default. And it does all this stuff automatically. This is not stuff I can control. This is stuff the browser does. And I have to work with it, right? And it tells you which styles those are, right? The other little panel down here is it does show, like, as I'm hovering on that H2, the content, the padding, apparently there is none, the border, there is none, and the margin, right? And that's all available here. And I think if I clicked on the header tag, I could see the content, the padding, the border, and the margin. Well, there is no margin on it, but I think that's really kind of a neat tool also. Once again, shows you the dimensions down in here. And it reinforces kind of this whole concept of the CSS box model and how it operates, that every object we put on the screen is rectangular. And if you apply styles to each one of those elements, you can see them through the inspect tool, right? I think this is like particularly cool, right? Another thing that happens inside this tool is you also have what you call the console. And okay, programmers, right? So if you know how to code, this is a JavaScript console because that's the backend language for browsers. And I can do goofy stuff like 2 + 2. And if I press enter, it'll execute. And if I do something even weirder like document dot write, and then in parentheses, I say hello world, right? Which is like that goofy thing you're supposed to type. And then I press enter on it, check it out. I can push stuff to the browser, right? So this is the JavaScript console. Like for right now, by the way, not something you're learning about, but when you get to your JavaScript class, you'll use this a lot, right? And if you write JavaScript and there's problems with the JavaScript, the console shows you the errors with your JavaScript, right? So once again, not really part of this class, but when you get to the next class, good to know. All right. So there's a recorder feature here, which is kind of a weird thing, but I can actually turn on recordings, which captures how my website is performing, like how fast it takes for images to load. I'm not going to demonstrate this feature. This is, I would call this also more advanced. But you can have somebody like traverse your website and you can record that, and then you can replay the recorder to see how it's working, and you get detailed performances. Like, for example, they click on a web page, it'll show you how long every image takes to load. And hopefully it's like really fast, but useful tool for sure. The performance insights like works off of the recorder, by the way. Then you have this weird sources tab that shows where the files are located. Isn't that interesting? It shows like where it's being loaded from, what files are being loaded. So I'm on the whatever page and it's loading my HTML and my CSS, and I can see them inside of here. Pretty slick, right? Like if you don't like this view, I mean, I can go here and I can look at my HTML file, right? Pretty slick, right? Then you also have the network tab. This shows all the stuff on the page that loaded. Notice the CSS, the HTML page, but also my images. And actually, if you can like slide the columns over here, it shows you the status. This is an HTML status code. We haven't learned about these, but 200 is good. That means it loaded correctly. It tells you what you're looking at. HTML is a document. This is a style sheet. This is our JPEG file, our PNG file, right? Who put this on the page? The CSS style sheet did, or the HTML did. And then what is the size of that and how long did it take to load? Milliseconds are good, right? There's 1,000 milliseconds in a second. So all of this stuff loaded in, the total load time was 53 milliseconds. If you're loading a page and you look at this network tab and it's taking seconds to load, chances are you're losing your audience, by the way. So this is a good way to measure metrics on the website. More performance indicators, right? So it tells you a couple of things here. How the memory is being used. Once again, these are, I'd say, pretty complicated tools, and I call these much higher level tools. When you start to work with background web applications, so for example, you guys will learn how to do work with databases and Node.js and of other backend technologies, you can see if the application you're working with has a manifest, or if there's all these other higher level tools that it's utilizing. And of course, if you're looking at this stuff going, oh, I don't know what any of this stuff is, that's okay because you haven't learned about it yet. But when you do get into that, right, and you learn how to do all this background stuff, all of it is traceable here on the back end. These are really super powerful tools, you guys, that in many cases did not really exist for us a while ago. And there's more. There's the security tab, right? So this is telling me, it would check the security status. This doesn't have a security option because it's non-HTTP. And then we also have the application tab, which we already looked at. And there's the Lighthouse tab, where you can actually run a report, and it'll give you some information on the performance of your site, whether it's accessible, right? So if you're worried about accessibility, you can run this. Whether we're following best practices, including like what colors you choose, contrast, example, and if your page is SEO compliant. Once again, a more advanced tool. All right. Now, the other thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the same URL and I'm going to bring up a different browser. So like so far I've been using Chrome almost exclusively in this class, and maybe a little bit to our detriment, honestly. I'm going to load up that same page in here. So this is in Firefox. And I use this tool as an example once again, because I would call this the other major browser of contention, in terms of coding. This also has developer tools here, and I want you to kind of look at so the same developer type of tools are all in this tool, but I want you to notice that it also has other tools in here that Chrome doesn't necessarily have or have offered in the same way. And the reason I point out the Firefox tools, and I know a lot of people don't use Firefox anymore, but their tools are some of the original ones for web developers. In fact, they were the first one that had a tool called Firebug, is what they called it in the old days, which was basically the console and an inspector like this. And I'm going to argue that even though these tools are practically identical between the two products, they have different workflows. And I think, and this is an opinion, right? I think the Firefox tools, at least in the inspect panel, are easier to use, more intuitive, and arguably better, and they go a little bit deeper, but they do steal from each other a lot, like all the different browser things. So like, for example, if you're using Safari on a Mac, Safari really is in essence Google Chrome. If you're using Microsoft Edge, which also has developer tools in it, that's also Google Chrome really at its heart. So the developer tools are essentially the same. If you go into a browser like Opera, it does have Chrome-like developer tools, but I don't think they're as good as Chrome's. So the only one that's really different is Firefox. And you know what, you guys, it has some things that are a little bit different. So for example, if I make edits to a style sheet here, I want you to notice in Firefox, I can actually save it. I can't do that in Chrome directly without plugins, by the way. So this is one spot where I think Firefox is maybe a better tool. I don't know if you guys are necessarily seeing that, but many of the same categories of tools. It also has an emulator, and I don't want you to forget about this, but the inspect tools are this is available in Chrome as well. So this and basically profile tool allows us to get in here and emulate different devices that we're pushing to, and you can select it, from a list. And now each one of the products that you're looking at has a somewhat limited list, and you can actually edit this list and get the profiles and update it. But you'll notice that I think the Firefox one is a little better than the Chrome one in a couple of different ways. It's got more recent models of phones than Chrome does by default. And it also tells you which operating system you're pushing to. So if what does it look like on a Galaxy S20 running Android 11? Or what does it look like on an iPhone 12 or 13 Pro running iOS 14.5. And then you can customize these, by the way. And then you can also go into the edit list, and there's a bunch of ones that aren't even showing that you can turn on. So if you want to emulate what it looks like, this tool here in Firefox is, to me, far superior, right? So this is something you should not ignore. The other thing that I'm going to point out about Firefox, and I'm not going to have enough time to talk about our IDEs here tonight, by the way, is Firefox also has a developer edition. Well, this is kind of interesting. So they have a completely, so I want to come out of my emulation mode here. I want to go back to regular browser mode. Firefox actually makes a separate browser for developers. And I want to put it on your guys' radar. It's basically the same product, but you notice they have a blue Firefox logo instead of the orange one. And it's built for people like us who code, and the developer tools are brought farther forward, and there's some extra tools that they throw in that aren't in the regular version of the browser. So I'm not saying that you guys must download and install this product, but it is worthy of you exploring it for sure. You might just discover that it's better. And I'm trying to see here. No, I don't even have it installed on this machine. And I probably should, but you should check it out and try it. The other major thing I'm going to say about when you're checking your work in different browsers is, I mean, you guys have already discovered part of the secret sauce is that Chrome, Edge, Safari, which are three prominent browsers, are really all built on top of the Chrome engine. So they're basically, the way they show a page on the screen is Chrome. If you're using one of those three products, they're essentially the same. They have a different skin on the front, different controls. They look a little bit different, but the way they render a page on the screen is all based on the Chrome engine. So if you want to look at an alternative view, Firefox is the one you want to look at because it's really the other major browser, and it does have a different rendering engine. So you still do get differences if you look at Firefox and look at the Chrome-based engines. The other browser to also keep on your radar is Opera, right? And this is one, I do get people once in a while, like in my classes, even they're like, yeah, Opera's my favorite, that kind of thing. But it's a very small crowd that's into this, but it is a cool browser to check out. They kind of do things a little bit differently. It also works on mobile. So if you've never tried it, I would implore you to, hey, download and try it. What's going to happen? You might like it. That'd be the worst case scenario. They have all the same kind of features that the other browsers do. This also, to my knowledge, still uses its own unique rendering engine, so might give you slightly different results in the long term in terms of what your pages look like. I don't worry about the Opera crowd so much, but it is notable to say that when you're on platforms other than Windows, other browsers come to prominence. I still think most people still like to use Chrome. Doesn't matter what OS you're on. But if you're on a Mac, a lot of Mac users never load browsers other than Safari. So it might be wise to have a Mac computer with Safari on it. You used to be able to get Safari for Windows, but no longer. Another browser, like when I'm on my Mac, I prefer to use Firefox as my primary browser, even though I have Chrome. Right, so these are like weird things like that you think about. All right, folks, I'm going to cap this lecture here. So this lecture is